Abigail White, a 22-year-old, and Bradley Lewis had 3 children and lived in Kingswood, a town in the south of England. Abigail was better known as Barbie Fake and earned more than €5,000 a month through the adult site OnlyFans. For most, that amount of money would be enough to solve any problem and lead a happier life. But not for the couple, Abigail and Bradley. According to friends and family close to them, their relationship was very peaceful in the beginning, but as time went by, it became increasingly troubled. It is said that in recent months, their relationship had deteriorated even further, and the two began to have constant and increasingly violent fights. The reasons for these fights were varied, but according to people close to them, the main ones were due to the consumption of narcotics and alcohol by both, and the alleged infidelity on Bradley's part. Many who were part of the couple's social circles stated that their relationship was extremely toxic and that Abigail was super controlling and suspected that Bradley wasn't faithful. However, those who followed the couple on social media believed they were happy and couldn't imagine the turmoil they were experiencing. In early 2022, the relationship took another blow after Abigail, who was pregnant with their 4th child, lost the baby. With that, tension between them rose, and Bradley decided to spend some time at his mother's house. Despite being temporarily separated, they saw each other every day and even went out together to meet friends. On March 25, 2022, they had a get-together at the Horseshoe Pub in Down End. A guy named Alfie Pike, who was a friend of the couple, picked them up at home so they could go to the pub together. According to him, Abigail and Bradley were already fighting before they even got in the car. Inside the pub, the couple consumed a lot of alcohol and also used a number of narcotics that Abigail herself had taken. At some point in the night, Abigail decided she wanted to leave and went to get Bradley, but he said that he would finish drinking first and then they could leave. Abigail didn't like this answer at all. Already very upset and enraged, she knocked over Bradley's and Alfie's glasses and said, "Now you have nothing left." Soon after, an employee who worked at the pub approached them and asked what was going on. The couple ignored the employee, and very heated, they started to argue and then got into a physical fight in front of everyone. Because of this, the two were expelled from the pub, and Alfie offered to take them back home. As they drove home in their friend's car, the couple continued a heated argument. When they arrived in front of the house around 7:45 p.m., Abigail got out, while Bradley said to Alfie that as soon as he got inside, he'd be done. Alfie asked him what he meant by that, but Bradley just repeated it. After that, Bradley got out and Alfie left. Less than 10 minutes later, at 7:54 p.m., Bradley called Alfie saying that things were much worse than he thought. Around 8:15 p.m., a neighbor of the couple named Lara County heard terrifying screams coming from their home. She then left and went to see what was going on. She saw Abigail screaming in the backyard that Bradley couldn't breathe, as if she were asking for help. Lara went to the couple's house to try to help with whatever was happening. As soon as she entered, she saw Bradley lying on the kitchen floor, very injured. Frightened, she immediately called England's emergency number, 909, and asked for an ambulance. While paramedics were on their way, Lara was instructed by the dispatcher to at least administer first aid to Bradley. They told her to press the wound he had on his body and check his breathing. Meanwhile, Abigail was hysterical, pacing and talking gibberish. The attendant also asked Lara to ask Abigail what had happened, so they could pass the information on to the team going to the location, ensuring more effective service. When questioned by Lara, Abigail said that she and Bradley had an argument, and out of nowhere, he grabbed a bladed weapon and hurt himself in the chest. A few minutes later, help arrived, and they took Bradley to the nearest hospital. Due to the seriousness of the situation, the police were called, and when they analyzed the scene, they suspected Abigail's version. police officers also realized that she had tried to clean the place, as there was a mop in the house with blood and there were also bloody clothes in the washing machine. This indicated that Abigail was concerned with first trying to clean the place and change her clothes, and only then asking for help. The knife that was supposedly used by Bradley, which was a kitchen knife about 10 centimeters long, was found in the hallway of the house, which for the police didn't make sense. Despite suspecting Abigail, the police didn't know for sure what had actually happened there, so until a thorough investigation was carried out, the woman could not be accused of anything in the first place. In the morning of the next day, Bradley Lewis couldn't resist his injuries and ended up passing away. An autopsy was performed on his body and found that there was a single hole in his chest, 7 centimeters deep, that had reached his heart. With Bradley's passing, the investigation shifted from homicide to a much more serious crime, and with that, Abigail was called in to provide clarification. In testimony, the young woman said that when they got home, the two began to argue, and at a certain point, Bradley mentioned that he would hurt himself with the bladed weapon that was on the kitchen counter. She then took that bladed weapon first and ran out with the intention of throwing it out of the house and thus preventing him from getting hurt. However, before she could do so, Bradley caught up with her in the hallway, where he grabbed her hand that was holding the bladed weapon and put it towards his chest. At that moment, she saw that this had caused Bradley a major injury and ended up panicking, running out of the house and calling for help. She also assured the police that she had not hurt her partner. According to the police, during the entire statement that Abigail gave, she did not show any kind of emotion, which they found very strange as she had just lost her partner. On March 28, 2022, after the police carried out a brief investigation and found numerous inconsistencies in Abigail's version, she was arrested, accused of the crime, and of having given a false statement. During the entire period in which she was imprisoned, Abigail claimed her innocence, saying that Bradley was solely responsible for what had happened to him. However, she would put these allegations to rest and tell the whole truth at her trial, after the police presented a variety of evidence and weaknesses. On October 21, 2022, Abigail's trial began in court. It was revealed that after Bradley left the family home to move in with his mother in early 2022, he decided he was going to divorce Abigail. However, the boy was afraid that Abigail might take her own life because of this, as she had said she would on previous occasions. With that, he continued to maintain a relationship with her, even though they lived in separate houses. Earlier on the day of the crime, Bradley went with Abigail and the children to a park. There, he gathered the courage to tell the young woman that he no longer wanted to have a relationship with her. Obviously, this generated an argument between the two. Despite the fact that the atmosphere became quite tense, they still decided to go to the pub that night as they had already arranged it with their friends. It was also revealed in court that, a week before the crime, Abigail had wounded Bradley in the arm with a bladed weapon. Still in court, officers presented voice messages from Abigail sent to some friends, in which she expressed her anger upon discovering another betrayal by Bradley. In these messages, she spoke of other times she had been betrayed and how she had to really confront Bradley. She even threatened him so he would admit what he had done. In one excerpt, she said, "He knows I have no limits when I'm angry." Although Abigail repeatedly claimed that she was betrayed by Bradley, both to people close to her and to the authorities, this was never officially proven. According to some of Bradley's friends, he never did anything wrong. However, Abigail insisted otherwise, as she was described as extremely possessive and controlling. The day before the crime, Bradley called a friend for help, saying that Abigail was trying to take his life. This friend was desperate at the time, but later calmed down when she learned that the couple had reconciled. A medical examiner who was involved in the case also testified in court, According to him, it would be impossible for Bradley to have been injured with a bladed weapon on his own, as the position of the cut and its depth did not correspond to a self-inflicted wound. In addition, the force used in the blow was very great, as it crossed the cartilage of the rib and entered the main chamber that pumps blood to the heart. Based on Abigail's testimony and the position she and Bradley were in at the time, it was deemed very unlikely that Bradley could have done this to himself. Evidence was also presented that Abigail was more concerned with cleaning the place and changing clothes than asking for help. If it weren't for the efforts of Laura, the couple's neighbor, Bradley would not have been rescued alive from the scene. With all this evidence presented against her, Abigail White realized she had nowhere to run and decided to tell the whole truth about what actually happened that night. She said she was very angry and frustrated because she didn't want to separate from Bradley. After they went to the pub and had a lot to drink, they both became very upset. Upon returning home after being expelled from the pub for fighting, they started another argument. According to her, at that moment, Bradley began pushing her down the hallway of the house. She then went into the kitchen, grabbed a knife, and went after him. She claimed she only intended to scare him, but before she knew it, she had already stabbed him in the chest. Abigail insisted that she never intended to hurt Bradley, saying it was all an accident caused by her excessive consumption of alcohol and narcotics. The young woman's defense leaned on this argument in an attempt to get the lowest possible sentence for her. A clinical psychologist who evaluated Abigail while she was in police custody testified in court that Abigail had enormous difficulty controlling her anger. The psychologist explained that a part of Abigail's brain seemed to shut down during moments of intense anger, causing her to act impulsively without thinking about the consequences. A forensic psychiatrist told the jury that Abigail suffered from borderline personality disorder, whose symptoms include emotional instability, feelings of worthlessness, self-doubt, and impulsiveness. He further stated that her account of what happened was consistent with her having this disorder. The jury deliberated for 12 hours and found Abigail White guilty of the crime against Bradley Lewis. She received a life sentence with the possibility of parole only after serving 18 years of her sentence. Even after Abigail's conviction, Bradley's parents said they still didn't feel justice was served, as they believed she deserved a much harsher punishment. They also expressed anger toward Abigail and sadness for her and Bradley's children, who would now be without both their father and mother. Family and friends mourned what happened to Bradley. Many of them knew what the couple's relationship was like and tried to help in any way they could, but it always ended in tragedy. Custody of the couple's children was granted to Bradley's parents, who assured that they would give the children plenty of love and affection to shield them from the impact of their mother's actions.